This video we're going to show you how to install and uninstall and adjust the pitch on a left-hand senior model propeller. This one is a sail drive. Okay, so first thing you want to do if you're uninstalling a prop, you want to see is it a left-hand propeller or a right-hand propeller. You need to confirm that. So this one here is a left-hand propeller. There's the straight edge of the blade, which on all our Hydralign propellers is the leading edge of the blade. If that does lead and rotates anti-clockwise like this, it's going to push water backwards and that's going to push the boat forwards. Now if the exact opposite happens, if it starts spinning clockwise, the leading edge then changes and it's going to start pushing water forwards and pulling the boat backwards. Righto. So we don't need to undo these 6 socket-headed cap screws on the back here, we just leave them be. But what we do need to undo is these 8 socket-headed cap screws around the circumference back here. And before we take the last one out, we'll take the anode off the back. I've just got a little handle in here. Take the anode off the back, and through the hole which the anode's bolt goes, you can grab a screwdriver or something small enough to fit through and use that to push on the end of the pinion. Now you got to cock it off to one side or the other a little bit to hit the pinion, because the pinion does have a hole straight through the middle, so you can end up going straight through like that. I'll show you that in just a second. The reason being, if you don't do that and you pull it apart, you may take the pinion back with the blade assembly, and what that's going to do is mean you've lost your pitch setting altogether. So in this case we're not going to have that problem because it's on the bench and it's all held down by gravity. Anyway, you see what I mean, there's a hole here in the end of the pinion, so you need to cock the screwdriver off to push down on the gear. So we know it's a left-hand propeller. The next thing we need to do is check the pitch. So it will be all greasy and covered in stuff like this one, so you just clean it off and you look for the datum. Now in this case this propeller only has one datum, that is the single dot. So that is the datum on the pinion for both left and right hand. If it had a single dot and somewhere else 2 dots, the single dot would be the datum for the right hand and the 2 dots would be the datum for the left hand. However, in this case only a single dot, so that's the datum for both left and right hand. So you need to take a note of where that is, because if you're uninstalling to put an anode on or something, you want to be able to put it back on the same pitch. So in this case we're on the datum 0 for 0, so we can pull the pinion out. Now this part of the story is fairly self-explanatory. This little socket-headed grub screw in there is an M6. It can come out, which then releases the nut. So the nut can then be undone from the end of the shaft. Now that's the same whether it's a sail drive or whether it's a shaft drive, either way. So then the nut can just rotate and come free. So we can start talking about installing or reinstalling. Now if you're installing for the first time, you want to be sure that the shaft doesn't protrude like that does there, particularly on a sail drive. This is sail drive or on a shaft drive, but we'll just talk about a sail drive here. So the shaft can't protrude because obviously the nut will do up on the shaft and then the propeller will be able to move back and forth. If the shaft does protrude at all, we will have sent with the propeller a kit with a few little spacer washers like this. You can put one on, or you can put a couple on, or you can put them all on, whatever combination works, so that it doesn't protrude through. Righto, so once you've got that right, the nut goes on, screws up onto the end of the sail drive shaft. You don't need to do that incredibly tight, because as you can see in this example you can snap off the thread on the end. So you just do it up nice and firm until one of these 4 slots lines up with one of these 2 M6 grub screw holes. Then you replace the grub screw with the nut in place like so. Okay, now if you're setting up for the first time, we will have given you a recommended pitch. If you're reassembling and you want to increase or decrease pitch, what you want to think about is the way the propeller rotates to push the boat forward, so in this case left hand. If you go in the direction of rotation, you're going to get more pitch. Opposite the direction of rotation, less pitch. So direction of rotation we refer to as a plus pitch, opposite a minus pitch. So in this case, I'm going to say, we took it off, it was on the datum, but I'm just going to say we want to go to +6. One more thing I should note about that, you cannot index in between the stamped numbers. The datum always has to line up with a stamped number. So +6 for the left hand is around to the 6 in the anti-clockwise direction because the propeller rotates anti-clockwise. To reassemble further, you rotate the hub, that is the bit on the inside connected to the sail drive shaft or the propeller shaft. The hub goes anti-clockwise. The collar, which is this bit here, goes clockwise. This is for a left-hand propeller, until the L on the hub lines up with the datum on the collar. You then take the blade assembly and you look around and there's an L and a datum stamped on each blade. You line that up with the datum stamped on the body here, and then you can lift the blade assembly with the datums down the side and align it with the datum on the side of the collar. Lift it up, drop it on. Might need a little bit of a wiggle. There we go. First thing you do before you throw all 8 socket-headed cap screws back in is you throw in one, and you don't even really need to do it up particularly tight. So just do it up a few turns. First thing to do is just make sure that when it feathers, all the blades line up like that. If one of the blade's gear's teeth is out on the pinion, it'll be really obvious. It'll be quite a long way out. So then you just reassemble that last step. Now, the other thing, if you've gone to +6 like we have here, the datum between the blade and the body isn't going to line up perfectly because that datum is set with the 0 pitch setting. So the datum on the pinion lining up with the datum on the hub. So finally you put in the 8 socket-headed cap screws around the bottom, tighten them up again. Then, before you paint your propeller in any way, you put in the M8 grease nipple that we supplied into the hole that the bolt for the anode fits into, and you pump it full of grease until grease comes out the blade journals. Then you remove it, roll the propeller back and forth once or twice, wipe off the excess and put the anode back on with the bolt down the middle. Obviously that gets nipped up tight. Then you'll find on the forward end of the collar there's a M8 grub screw that comes out. The grease nipple that we supplied again goes in there, and you pump that full until you see grease coming out the forward end of the propeller and or around these socket-headed cap screws. Do the same procedure, grease nipple out, roll it back and forth a couple of times, wipe off the excess, grub screw back in. So that's how you adjust your Hydralign Senior model propeller.